327 Federal Magnum is boss. I'm going to test our Speer Gold Dot 327 Federal Magnum in our short barrel versus our short barrel 9mm and our 9mm Speer Gold Dot. So I'm going to use my Taurus G2C with the 3.2 inch barrel to test the 9mm+P, and my Ruger LCR with the 1.875 inch barrel to test the 327 Federal Magnum. Both have about the same amount of barrel travel in those guns for how much bullet moves, how much distance you got from the bullet nose to the muzzle. So very fair way to test that. So if you didn't know, I actually carry the 327 Federal Magnum on a daily basis. I feel like it is the best option for the size of gun it is. You have a capacity of 6. 327 Federal Magnum is a very ideal cartridge for a short barrel because you're at a lot higher pressure than 357 Magnum or 9mm. Those are both at 35,000 psi nowadays, as where our 327 is at 45,000. So essentially you have a little bit more efficiency there in burning up that powder in a short barrel, and you have a good amount of punch that's almost as powerful as a snub nose 357 Magnum out of a snub nose. So that's what I like to carry on a daily basis. So we're going to test these and show how the 327 Federal Magnum really is a really good cartridge. I don't test 327 very often. We're going to see what we get. So we're going to go through the chronograph, see what kind of velocity and accuracy we get at the same time. Then I'm going to do my 10% clear ballistic test. We're going to go into plain clear ballistics to see what the best potential of those cartridges are. After that, we're going to do more of our real world simulation where I have 4 layers of denim on this first 3-inch piece that represents our pectoral muscle. After that, we'll have a 1/4 inch medium density fiberboard that's going to represent ribs and sternum, and to the clear ballistics block, and we'll see how they compare that way. And then of course I'm going to see what kind of practical shootability I can get on steel. So let's get started with this test. Alright, so the velocity read on the screen is some rounds of 22 I shot through there to make sure the chronograph is set up correctly. In the summertime I often have a hard time getting reads because of all of the leaves. Not getting enough light down here, so I got my light set up and all that, and confirmed that it works with a few shots of 22 long rifle. So first up we have our 9mm 124 grain plus P. I do not know the rate of velocity because Speer does not list those rated velocities on these boxes at all. So let's see if we get here with our 124 grain 9mm plus P. 1193, 1163, 1174, 1164. 1186. So that's actually pretty good velocity for what it is. You know, really close to 1,200 feet per second out of a little short barrel. That's not bad. 327 Federal Magnum. Let's see what we get here. It's only a 100 grain bullet, but let's see what we get. $13.36, $13.69, $13.83, 1387, 1300. Let me run one more. 1376. So one was a little bit off there, but we're approaching 200 feet per second faster than over that 9mm. Now, of course, you know, the bullet is lighter, but still, that's a lot of velocity. And I've noticed when you bring a bullet weight down, you add a lot of velocity to it, it energy dumps the target really well. So let's see what our ballistic performance is when we hit our ballistics shell block. So let's do that. All right, plain clear ballistics. This is what I call our best potential, and we have the best potential for the bullet to expand without getting clogged with denim, and we have the best potential for penetration because we're not hitting a bone simulation. So 9mm+P. Let's see what we get here. All right, 327 Federal Magnum. Let's go take a look. All right, so we had some bounce back with that 9mm bullet. That happens from time to time with clear ballistics because it's synthetic. It'll create a really big hole, and while that hole is still open, the bullet will roll back. So anytime we see bullet roll back, what it means is that bullet definitely expanded. pretty big. Generally I see it when it's over 60 diameter. But what we can see here is in our first 3 inches here, here's our energy dump with our 9mm on the bottom and our 327 on top. Again, 9mm 327. Quite a bit more energy dump with the 327. That being said, the 9mm energy dump does look pretty good in and of itself. And we got really good expansion with both of these. Both of these have very similar damage tracks. You know, our 9mm is more consistent. Our 327 slightly bigger where it started and then kind of petered out a little bit. But what we see with our penetration with our 9mm is spot on at about 17 inches. And when we look at our 327 Federal Magnum, what we got is about 15.5 inches. Sometimes bullets in the back of that block this way will cause camera parallax to kind of make it look like that bullet's actually up higher than where my finger is, but it's not. So 15.5 inches for our 327, about 17 for our 9mm. So in that regard, pretty comparable. Let's put on our denim, put in our MDF, see how they compare in more of our real world simulation. All right, 4 layers of denim, 3 inches of clear ballistics, a 1/4 inch medium density fiber board to represent ribs. This is our real world simulation. Here's our 9mm+P. All right, let me set that back up. We'll hit it with the 327. All right, same thing with our 327 Federal Magnum. Let's see what this does. Let's go take a look at that. All right, so through our first 3 inches here, 9mm on the bottom, our 327 is up on top. It's kind of hard to see, but our 327, even through our denim, had a little bit more energy dump in that first 3 inches. And a lot of times I like to say that that's beneficial, because from what I can tell, bullets that do that seem to be really effective at stopping threats. It's kind of delving into a science that's hard to explain, but that's kind of what I've seen here. Now when we look at our MDF here, there's virtually no difference other than the 9mm is a little bit larger of a hole versus the 327. The 327 does have a little bit of marks from fragments potentially of that bullet breaking up from moving so quickly. What it looks like here, it looks like the 9mm did more damage, but you know, sometimes in clear ballistics that thing is deceptive. It's really hard to say that one did a lot better than the other because it looks like that track is a certain way. And I think really what's going on is our 9mm is moving in a straighter line for a longer distance because it is a heavier bullet, as where we can see a loss of momentum with our 327 Federal. So it's kind of starting to curve a little bit. Damage does look a little bit better with our 9mm, but that's going in a little bit deeper. And that's kind of a phenomenon I've seen with 9mm a lot. If you look right here in our first 3 inches, there's a lot more with our 327. And we look right here, you see all this damage starts to happen at about 7-8 inches where the path widens with the 9mm. I think that's what 9mm often does because the bullet nose is so narrow and the hollow cavity is so small, is that it'll poke in pretty deep before it starts to expand out. As what we're seeing here is I believe that we were fully expanded here. So we have kind of a consistent but smaller expanded bullet with our 327. So with our 9mm+P, we have a penetration of about 20.5 inches. Some people would consider that over penetration. I don't think so. I doubt that would pass to an average person. And when we look at our 327, we're right there, I would say about 19.25 inches. So a little bit better for ideal penetration with our 327 Federal Magnum. So I would say both of these did pretty good for what they are. You know, I like the fact that I carry the 327 Federal Magnum. I think it's a good choice, and I do believe it would be more effective than the 9mm. Even looking at this, you might say, well, that looks like more damage. That being said, I don't think the 9mm is a bad choice either. You know, your 124+P Gold Dot has been a standard for a long time. It's been a good performer despite the different bullet barrel lengths. I've tested in all kinds of barrel lengths and always performs to some degree. It doesn't expand as big as HST or anything, but it always expands a little bit no matter the barrel length. So it's a very consistent performer. You really can't go wrong with it. So let's take a close-up look at these, and I'm going to shoot my steel, see what kind of practical accuracy I can get. All right, so here's a close-up look at these bullets, and if I didn't tell you which was which, you might have a hard time telling which is the 9mm and which is the 327 through the plain gel. Now here's our 9mm. It's a little bit taller because there's more bullet mass here, and our 327 Federal Magnum, a smaller base going on there. And we look at our expanded diameter. Our 9mm is a little bit bigger, but I think percentage-wise, our 327 actually expanded more. I haven't measured them yet. I generally don't measure them until I get back to edit videos. But considering the fact that if you round the numbers to the closest numbers, our 9mm is 36 caliber and our 327 is 31 caliber. The fact that this one's close to 5 caliber is about 4.5 caliber bigger, and yet they almost expanded to the same size. That says a lot. That's dumping a lot of energy with our 327. And when we go through our MDF, this is where things really change a lot with these cartridges. We get, especially Gold Dot, they get a lot smaller, but they still continue to expand some and penetrate well. Generally what we see with stuff like this is, a little bit less than 50 diameter, or maybe right around 50. Now when we look at our 327 Federal Magnum, again, it's about the same difference as going through plain gel as going through our MDF here. And I find it harder to tell the difference between the 327 and the 9mm through the MDF. It's really hard to tell the difference. I marked this, so this is the 9mm, this is the 327. So very similar performance overall. And, I really do think that they're going to perform similarly, but I do think just based on the energy dump, how fast these are dumping and delivering expansion in the first little part of that gel, I think the 327's got to be a little bit more effective just based on that. But it's probably not by a huge margin. I think both did pretty well, and both these are pretty comparable. It's just that our 327 I think is a little more powerful. So let's close up look at those bullets. All right, so I'm 12 yards from the target, so what I want to do is pull up with my guns here and get a sight picture, pop off 6 rounds because that's what the revolver holds, and that's actually a lot more than what the average person needs in a self-defense scenario. But we'll pop off 6 rounds, see what kind of controllability I can get on target. So, and by the way, this gun weighs about 20 ounces and the LCR weighs about 17 and a half, so they're pretty similar in weight. So 9mm, let's see what I get here with this. Alright, they wanted to kind of drift a little bit low for me when I'm firing kind of quickly. So 327 Federal Magnum, I'll do that same thing, see how these compare. So I'm pulling some of them a little bit to the left. Point of impact though for our elevation is a lot closer for me, just popping them off. Now this is definitely harder to shoot than the 9mm, I'm not gonna lie on that. However, it's significantly easier to shoot than a 357 Magnum snub, and that has a lot of recoil, and you're getting nearly the same energy as this with this as a lot of 357 Magnum loads in a snub. So let me back it up a little bit. All right, 75 yards just for giggles here. The main reason why I've been doing this lately is jumping right back to 75 yards is because I have limited space to put a tripod this direction. When I put it this direction, it blackens me out. So my 50 yard, 40 yard, 25 yard markers, I have to put the tripod over this way, or over this way I should say, and you can't even see me. I mean, you can, but it's really bad quality. So I like to have the lighting go this way, so why not just for fun? See what I can do here with our short barrels from 75 yards. I don't know if I'll make any hits. I'm generally not very accurate with this particular pistol, but let me try to slow it down, see where I think they're hitting, do my best job, see if I can make any hits here. Saw that hit to the right. Huh, I'm lining up those sights pretty well. I feel like I should be hitting. So what I did there to make those hits is I aimed at the head on every one of those shots. So I think they were more consistently dropping low, so I'm aiming center of that target and maybe even low center there going below it. So 327, I don't know about this. Snub nose, 75 yards. It is moving fast. So let's see what I can do. Yeah, it went above the target. I kind of saw that one coming. I saw that consistency on paper, that they were hitting a little bit higher. So let me aim kind of below the target a little bit. Not sure where they're hitting. So I finally figured out where to hold. Got to hold basically the bottom 20% of that target. So they were shifting up just a little bit. And it's always hard to explain these hits to people because they'll see the downrange camera and they'll be like, I saw that hit to the right, and the same elevation. In reality, it actually barely hit to the right and hit above the target by like 6 feet entirely, because the camera's down here, the silhouette's up here. So what you think you see hitting here, okay, bring it down, it's here. Yeah, if that makes any sense at all. So sometimes I get a lot of advice. You need to hold here, buddy. It's like, you're not seeing it right. So what we can see here is 327 Federal Magnum versus 9mm. I'd say both of them did about as good as each other here overall. They both did quite well. Now, I think the 327 Federal Magnum, I mentioned this before, is a little bit better of an option. And I'm saying that based on the fact that there is no real street data on that, so I'm going to get that out of the way. There really isn't. But based on the fact that when I look at a lot of different cartridges that have high stopping power, they seem to stop threats really easily. What you kind of see here is the lower weights of those particular calibers and the ones that will, after the fact, be tested in gel and expand really fast, like within a couple inches. Those tend to be the cartridges that have the highest stopping power, like 357 mag, 125 grain semi-jacketed hollow point, Federal 9mm+P+, 115 grain 9B pretty much fragments on impact. It expands immediately. Even Federal Hydroshock 45 ACP, even though it's a slow cartridge or slow velocity, you get a lot of expansion right away, and all of them are well above 90% one-shot stop. As when we look at 9mm, it's really hard to judge, how effective it is. Some of the cartridges that are in this range are a little bit lower in real world shootings for effectiveness per shot. So looking at the 327, it has the attributes of a lot of these really light bullets that dump energy fast. It's in the velocity range of the ones that dump energy fast. So I do think it's probably significantly more effective than the 9mm in the real world, because gel does not necessarily represent flesh the way you would want it to. So I know a lot of people look at this and be like, you're so biased, and they say stuff like that when I sometimes look at like 38 Special versus 9mm, and the 9mm would be really big, and the 38 Special might be a little bit less expanded. And I'll say, well, I do think that based on some of the numbers I've researched, the 38 probably is a little more effective. And they're like, you're biased, you just stupid, you don't listen, you don't, whatever. And the reason why they say that is they're not realizing I'm looking at real world data, I'm looking at real world averages, real world attributes that kind of go into this, and compare it to what I'm seeing in ballistics gel and trying to figure out an equation of what I think how effective it would be in the real world. And based on that, I think the 327 a little bit better, because velocity numbers like that tend to always work a little bit better. That being said, for a consistent 9mm, I think this Gold Dot is a very consistent 9mm. I don't think it's a bad choice. And this is the thing, this is Gold Dot. And with Gold Dot, this is the way I look at it. Like, I choose Federal HST for my 327 carry ammo. That's what I have. in it. I choose Federal HST for my 40 caliber, and I would choose Federal HST for the 9mm, but I actually am using 9mm+P LEs. I think it's a little bit better. But when it comes to Gold Dot, what Gold Dot has that a lot of these other brands don't have is they have sometimes a little bit of oddball calibers. Like G27 Federal is one of them. It does come in HST now, but for a long time you could only get it in that for a really good defensive round. Or let's talk about something like, I don't know, there's a few out there where it's some oddball calibers or oddball loadings like 38 Special Plus P 135 grain Gold Dot. There's not really equivalent to that in HST anymore, and there's a whole bunch of little calibers like that where, you know, 25 ACP, different 30 calibers in Gold Dot that you don't get in those other ones. So Gold Dot across the board performs well with a little bit less energy. So coming back around to my point here, stuff like HST, stuff like that, you got to have a certain amount of velocity and energy for it to work well. Gold Dot seems to work well even if you have less velocity. So my point is, a Gold Dot 9mm, whether you're a 3-inch barrel, 4-inch barrel, 5-inch barrel, it all seems to work pretty well. So you can't really go wrong with Gold Dot. So it's about a 2-minute explanation on something simple there. So both of these did pretty well. So I'm just going to leave it at that, let you guys draw your own conclusions on what you think about this ammo. So that's what you get today. So as always, comment, share, and like, and thanks for watching.